When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Duran.
My guest today is Vicki O'Leary. Vicki has been widely recognized for making a difference in confronting the challenges of diversity, inclusion, and social justice in the construction industry. She once said that I realized that every woman who has worked construction has been at some time in her career afraid. This fear isn't about being injured during the work itself, but for her personal safety. She and others wondered why there couldn't be that one guy who could have prevented a range of tragedies that women were plagued by. Her palpable concern led to a pilot program she conceived, Be That One Guy. The program received strong buy-in from the general president of the International Iron Workers and was rolled out to the membership of the iron workers. In 2019, Engineering News Record recognized her contributions with the coveted Award of Excellence as a union leader who fights for diversity and respect. In 2019, Vicki was awarded the Tradeswoman Heroes Award by the North America's building trades unions. She was nominated because she had demonstrated a willingness to help and inspire all tradeswomen and her passion for equal rights for all women and people of color within the building trades. Vicki joined the Iron Workers International staff in January 2016. In the time since, she became chair of North America's Building Trades Union's Trade Women's Committee. She's a 36-year member of the International Iron Workers Union, local number 1 in Chicago. She also has been doing some other things. She completed her triple major Bachelor of Arts degree in Union Leadership and Administration, Labor Education, and Labor Studies from the National Labor College in 2008, and her Master's of Arts degree at Gonzaga University in Organizational Leadership in 2012. In 2018, Vicki graduated from the Harvard Trade Union program and completed the Cornell National Labor Initiative. Wow. Vicki, welcome.
Thank you.
To the Soft as Steel podcast. Did I get that about right?
It's about right. And now I'm at 38 years in the ironworker. So
we'll fix that. It was 38, folks, not 36. You know, I'm just so delighted to see you. Again, this isn't in person, but our last conversation 4 years ago, or roughly 4 years ago, was a telephone conversation.
Yes.
So this is a good step forward, and it's just a delight to see you. And again, we could start just about any place. But I think I want to ask you as a question, and this will be a spontaneous conversation. Okay. I don't have prepared questions.
Great.
And I'm sure you don't have prepared answers, because it's clear to me, based on your track record and the reputation that you have, that you've earned through all of your great actions, all of your great work, particularly as it relates, again, to women and the whole notion of inclusion and social justice, which is about fairness in the workplace and being in a safe workplace, that you'll be speaking from your heart.
Absolutely.
As much as you speak from your role as an organizer for the International,
yes,
which is an important role you play. So let's just start with the idea that you've been passionate. Let's focus on one part of this. You've been passionate about the need for opportunities and a safe path for women in the construction industry. Tell us more about that.
Well, first of all, these are good paying jobs and good benefits and a great pension when you get to the end of your career. And just like men, women don't always want to sit in an office. They want to work with their hands. It just made perfect sense for women that are struggling to try to get into the building trades. But when they get there, the path is a little different because of the bullying, the harassment, the intimidation that goes along with it, because we don't look exactly like everybody else. And we know that there's not enough white guys to do all the work. Mm-hmm. And we especially know now that the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bill and all this other stuff, that they need us. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have to make it a more inclusive environment if they want us to stay. So my passion is for these women that I first met at a Tradeswomen Build Nations conference back in 2010, maybe 2012, was the first time I went. I went all the way there to actually meet people from my own city, which was crazy. And meeting these women and hearing their stories and knowing that I wasn't the only one was so incredibly powerful. And because I'd never seen another woman on my job site, except for the first job that I was ever on. That had a lot of women, but they had a PLA, McCormick Place at the time. So they brought us all in at the same time in my local. I don't know if I answered your question or not, actually.
No, you did. You did. The whole track of activities that have created more opportunities, more ways to try to bring women into the trades has really been multiplying pretty significantly over the last maybe 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
It's at least that's the way it seems to me. I'm aware, as an example, of the Women in the Trades program. I had an opportunity to spend a day with the Chicago Women in the Trades, doing a workshop for the interviewed and selected women that were in that program. Incredibly impressive to a person, every one of them. And we spent a day and talked about behavioral styles and emotional intelligence. It was the last day of their 10-week program.
Awesome.
And that's how we spent that last day. And they soaked it up because, again, it was not about them being women. It was about them being workers in a workplace and about trying to be prepared, being interested, and wanting the opportunity to succeed, which is any person who is in, let's call them the non-white male part of our world,
right,
which is a pretty big world.
Yes.
And that's the other thing, which continues to trouble me in some ways, is that the old white guys, and notice that I'm pointing at myself, although I'm not one of these in that sense, the old white guys still in many ways dominate the leadership, dominate the organizational structures, and dominate the key positions in unionized construction. Your international president, general president, took an important step by buying into your program. Be that one guy, and it was probably a big deal to get that to happen. But you were determined to do it. Why is it so important for us to try a more consistent way to understand that we need to look at all people as opportunities to try to do something which is necessary? You mentioned in your first set of phrases in terms of the why. One of the whys is it's a great place to work from a pay standpoint.
Yeah.
You mentioned the pension. Again, a number of unions are experiencing challenges with their pensions because of the fact that the baby boomers are leaving, and the unions are not as successful as they need to be in bringing new people in at the beginning of the pipeline. What's your take on that whole kind of that landscape?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of reasons why we need to look outside of our nephews and our grandsons and sons and brothers and that sort of thing, because there's not enough of them. Mm-hmm. Schools are really doing a disservice to the kids that not everybody's cut out for college. Let's be real. And they're also going to go into a lot of debt. So this is a earn while you learn model, which I think is fabulous. And it's also, I earned college credit for my apprenticeship. And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that I came out of my apprenticeship with nearly an associate's. Mm-hmm. So I was able to transfer all that to the National Labor College. And that's how I finished my bachelor's degree. So it's not like you're actually getting both, plus that third factor that you're getting paid while you're working. Mm-hmm. So it's a really great model. We have to do more work within the schools. We know that by the high school level, it's too late, that we need to start with the middle school kids. We need to, especially with women or young girls, to make sure that they realize that this is a pathway for them. Mm-hmm. Because not everyone wants to go to college. Not everyone can afford college, but this can certainly give you that jump in getting college credits and seeing if it's maybe something you want to do like I did later on in my life.
Right.
I went back to show my son that it could be done before he graduated high school. I wanted him to see that it was possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to kind of put it in perspective, when you were earning the credit towards an associate, when was that? What year was that?
I started my apprenticeship in 1985 and finished in 1988. Ooh. And didn't go back to school until 2006. But it only took me 2 years to get my bachelor's after that. So not a bad deal at all.
Yeah. What I want to highlight in that is when it happened. You were already in the union for a while at that point in time.
Yes.
Through your apprenticeship and then beyond. But you were one of probably very, very few women when you were in your apprenticeship program and also earning credits towards an associate's degree. We're now talking about that more widely in probably just about every one of the trades unions within the building trades, about programs where you enter an apprenticeship program, you earn college credit. We're talking about it like this is the latest great innovation in the career pathing,
right?
And so I just want to point out to our listeners in a positive way that here's someone who was doing it back in 1988, and 85 through 88. So that was a big deal, and I would say, and I can say this safely, would be a credit to the Ironworkers Union for back in 1985 having a program like that.
Yes. And I think that's so important. And that might be one way that we can sell it to the parents of kids, because that's one of the problems is the parents are, no, I want my daughter or son, I want them to go to college. Well, how about if they're earning an associate's while they're actually earning money and going to school?
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? There's a program you may be familiar with called the ACE Mentoring Program.
Yes.
It's been around a long, long time. It was founded by some brilliant visionary leaders that were part of architecture firms and general contractors and the like. But their focus, and to a good purpose, their focus was around underserved populations at the high school level. And really trying to generate their interest in engineering, architecture, construction, to enter in what they would call professional roles in the industry. And again, there are a number of people who will say with a certain amount of real good, important energy that being a tradesperson, being an iron worker, being a carpenter, being an electrician, being a painter, that these are professionals. These individuals are professionals. They get their hands dirty. They wear out their knees. They wear out their back. But they're professionals using their tools and their knowledge and know-how to deliver great products to the owners and operators of all kinds of building structures, et cetera. So I kind of wondering, and maybe you're aware of it, whether it exists, why we haven't, and I think you said it correctly, high school is almost too late.
Yes.
Because again, that's 8 years of a brain being wired, has passed by when they couldn't get a little of these connections, at the elementary school level to expose these kids as young as probably third or fourth grade, or maybe even younger, into what making things is all about. Because that's what we do. We make things in construction. We make great buildings and great facilities and power plants, and it goes on and on and on. What is the Ironworkers doing these days? I know you've got a great, I've had a chance to meet the guy that runs your impact program. A great guy, a lot of energy. What kinds of things are you guys doing as a union to try to extend the pipeline back into the earlier years?
One of the things we do is we partner with people or entities like NAWIC or Jamie McMillan in Canada. She's an iron worker who goes to schools in grammar school and middle school and talks about the great things that the trades can do. I went to a NAWIC magic camp that had partnered with the operating engineers, the iron workers, I forget what the other couple of trades were. And each day they brought the young women, the middle school girls, to their local. So I was there when they were at Local 10 in Kansas City, and they got to make a bench or a seat, a stool. So they got to cut out the steel. They got to, I tack welded it. Then they would take them over and they would let them help them weld it together. It was amazing. And then they got to take them home. And I thought, what a great thing, because now these girls will have these things to take home, and people are going to ask about it. And they say, hey, I went to this camp and this is what we did. On the day they were at the operating engineers, I heard they had a great time running equipment. So it gives them an idea, actually, what each trade does too, which I think is super important.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. Are you seeing more and more of those kind of programs?
Absolutely. And then you're also seeing, instead of the job fairs or the school fairs that we go to, instead of having the white guy sitting behind the booth and having the video rolling with men that are doing the work, you're seeing more women behind the booth. You're seeing the video that's behind it is of women doing the work and people of color, which I think is so important, that have been left out in history in the trade. So it's good. We're seeing a lot of movement.
So would you say that as you see the landscape now, are you increasingly optimistic? Are you cautiously optimistic about trying to broaden or widen the opportunities for, again, women and underserved communities?
I'm increasingly optimistic. I think that they realize now, especially at the local level, especially in places where they've got so much work coming up through the Infrastructure Act and the CHIPS Act and all the others, that they need people. And I really emphasize people. They need people. And they need people that have a good work ethic, that can learn to complete tasks on time, and they're productive and they're focused and organized and competitive in what they're doing, and, have persistence. It's not easy every day going to a construction site, but every day should be fun. And I think that when you feel like you're included in that group, that's when you actually see it become more of a collaborative workforce. And, it allows, and I think you probably wrote this in your book, I remember instances where creative thinking and idea exchanges happen when it's people that don't look like each other. And when you have empathy and you have patience and friendliness, enthusiasm, and all those good things. And I believe I probably touched on a lot that was in your book, but it did resonate with me so much of what you were talking about and in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to have as a guest on my podcast, Sean Strickland, who runs Canada's building trades unions. And when we close our conversation, one of the things we do is we decide on what the title of this episode will be. Well, Sean's title was The Construction Industry, A Story Worth Telling.
Yeah.
And so we talked about we talked about it more from just attracting the new generations. We're dealing with that in this conversation, but we're also bringing, the other range of issues that continue to be problematic. Again, cautiously optimistic is great. It's important. You have many more years to be a visible and active leader in the trades and your trade specifically, but just in general. When I hear your name, I don't hear about it talked about strictly as involved with the ironworkers. Your name is associated with a number of the national initiatives. You're looked at as a success story. I don't mean to be so gracious, but you deserve all that positive praise, because it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and I'd hasten to say that there are probably still walking around on some job sites in some parts of the country. People are just kind of shaking their heads. Oh, here comes Vicki O'Leary again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, they're leaving the industry over time, but they're still. Again, I've been associated with the building trades for, I guess, probably over 16 years, and that's the extent of my involvement, mostly with the finishing trades. But the culture of unions, there are many, many good things about the culture of unionized construction, but there are also things that are not so good. And some of them are changing, and they could change more rapidly. And really, it's a function of who are in the key leadership positions. Right. How much energy and drive do they want to apply to an initiative? And it's clear that your general president thought that the program you conceived was something that was a good thing to do. So you're doing it.
Yes.
Because as you know, in union construction, if the GP says do this, then we do this. And many times it's all good stuff, but sometimes it's we do this, but it's because, or maybe sometimes it's, well, I don't know if we can do that because we haven't done that in the past.
Yeah, I don't hear that from my GP very often.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Person who I think has been instrumental in the ironworkers being really one of the top in the field of diversity right now, at least getting the word out and making sure, or at least trying to do the right thing. And I'm really proud that we are the leaders in this.
Yeah. And I think Kevin Hilton and the work they're doing at Impact are visible indications of that.
Absolutely.
And it always struck me a number of years ago, and you may know this, I was an officer of the Construction Management Association, CMAA. And I always thought it was interesting that there was one union represented at every national conference, and that was the International Iron Workers Union. And they had their booth, and I can't think of the name of the gentleman, but he was still going to Kenny Waugh.
Yep.
Kenny Waugh, absolutely. And I'm sure he's still going to every frickin' conference he can, just to keep the name of the ironworkers out there, because you're still so vital. I mean, heck, my book is entitled "Soft as Steel."
That's right.
For goodness sakes.
That's right.
It seems to me, I'm thinking the ironworkers are going to want to, co-brand something with me. But as you know, I chose that title and the inspiration that didn't come directly from me, but I chose that title because it hones in on what I believe so strongly. You heard me talk about it when we conversed a few years ago in the interview for the book. But my analogy is that soft skills are to people and relationships what steel is to building structures and all kinds of other things.
That's right.
And what they have in common is you need them in order for things to last for a long time.
Agreed.
And that's kind of, so that's why I love the title. And from the very first day that I began talking and using the title, people said, God, I love that title. And they still do today. And so I'm really proud of that. What, if you had one thing that you would like to see a wider acknowledgement, acceptance, and pursuit of in the construction industry for the betterment of the current generations and future generations, what would it be?
Well, I come to two things on that. The first is that we need more women in leadership. We need more people of color at the table, because we're just going to be better if we do that, getting all these different ideas from different backgrounds and different people. The second is that I think that men take offense when women come on jobs for all the wrong reasons. And they always say, oh, I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to do more work just because I'm working with a woman. Part of that to me is anytime that we get more women on the job, we elevate the job by safety standards go up, because women are more in tune to the rules, right? We're rules players. And anytime you can get more bathrooms on a job site, you're not just bringing the standards up for the women, but you brought them up for everybody. And I think that that's what they're going to have to look at as more women come in, and we are going to have to acknowledge that there's certain things that women need. A clean restroom is one of them. A place to wash your hands is another. And you still don't find that on job sites. But maybe it's coming, right? Maybe everybody will get to wash their hands before they eat their lunch, instead of having to take those handy wipes out and wash their hands. So the more diverse we get, the better we're going to be treated, I think. Once we hit like a 20% on a job that's women and people of color, I think we'll see it change.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, I was thinking about personal protective equipment, and it's just been recently, in the last, seems like months or a year, that they finally are starting to produce protective coveralls that are tailored more to a woman's body shape.
Yes.
Which, it's, why did it take so long?
Well, it's still hard to find boots. Just walk in a store and buy boots. You have to order them and then hope they fit. If not, send them back, get another pair. Gloves off the shelf are hard to find, but you can find them if you order them. Work clothes is getting a little better, just to be able to go buy off the shelf. It's getting better. Everything about that is getting better. At least they're making them now. They may not be available on all store shelves, but we are able to get them. One thing that's still pretty hard, though, is work boots. But I did see that Keen sent me a pair of boots, and they're one of the most comfortable pair of boots right out of the box I've ever had. Incredible. I was shocked. So, and they're actually women's boots. I was like, are you kidding me? So that was really cool. So to see things coming down the pike, I know that 3M for a while there was saying they were going to have a woman's harness, an ExoFit, which is what the many iron workers wear. Now they're not going to market it as that. It's going to be marketed as something else, but it's still going to have that more tailored fit to a smaller body. So it's coming. It's getting better.
Yeah. So here we are talking about things like gloves and boots. It's almost like a commentary on the pace of change. And it takes a long time to do things that seem pretty straightforward. Again, you may remember, one section of my book, I had a series of thoughts that I talked a little bit about. In fact, I just started sending them out again randomly on Thursdays. I drop what I call my soft skills talks. And one of them is entitled "Common Sense is Not That Common." Yeah. And so, it continues to be amazing to me that our default is to wonder why rather than wonder how. Why do we need to do this? Not there's something here. Let's figure out what we can do, what we should do. Right. And it's a lot of little stuff. Again, we always talk about in terms of thinking about people and interacting with other folks, that the things that get you all worn out and upset and sometimes angry are the little ankle biters. It's not the big stuff; it's the little stuff that sometimes just feels like it's gnawing away at your ankles. Yeah. And I feel sometimes that's still what's going on in our industry.
That is. I mean,
I'd like to. Yeah.
You deal with microaggressions every day at work. It's not the last thing that happened that took you over the edge. It was all the little things that added up. And then that last thing is what made you flip out, is what I've found in this industry.
Again, I use the terminology in my four, what I call my four areas of focus in dealing with just the whole issue of soft skills. And I talk about love. And when we had our conversation, I asked you what does love mean to you? And I had the opportunity to facilitate what ended up being a 90-minute. It was supposed to be 1 hour, a 90-minute special edition of the Soft to Steel podcast in front of a live audience at the IUPAT's Finishing Industries Forum back in January in Las Vegas. And I had several contractors for this discussion, along with the general president, Jim Williams. And one of the questions I asked them is, how is love present in your life at work, at home, and in your community? And again, that's recorded. It's out on my website if you want to hear their answers. Great. It was very interesting. I was the session was I'm told was very successful, very well received by the audience and others. But I asked questions like that, because we need to be talking about the things that relate to people. And that's at the very essence of what you have done for years. You're talking about people. They happen to be women and individuals in underserved communities, but you're talking about people, right? And giving people the opportunity to be in rather than out, and to do it in a fair and equitable way, which is what social justice is. We haven't touched on it, and we're getting close to the end of our time together. You and I probably could talk for another hour.
Probably.
Yeah, but so maybe I'll have to come back to another Soft as Steel podcast.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe later on. Yeah, but one thing we haven't touched on, and it's kind of it's a little on the negative side to bring it up now, but it needs to be brought up because it's related, and particularly when I talk about social justice, and that is what appears to be some really good and important work being done around the issues associated with mental health, addiction, and suicide.
Yes.
And I think all of the unions have done great work over the last 1 to 3 years in initiating and taking programs to their members and to their communities. But it's you talk about microaggressions. Well, one of the stress factors that leads to problems with mental health, leads to the potential for addiction and suicide, is the nature of this workplace that we're trying to change and include all kinds of people. Your thoughts?
Well, I think part of the suicide in construction and opioid abuse go hand in hand, because we have to work even when we're injured for the most part. You get up, you take a pill, you go to work, because if you don't go to work, you're not getting paid unless it's a major injury and then you go on workman's comp. But for the most part, we work injured. And unfortunately, many of our members get hooked on these opioids. And prior to a couple of years ago, they were given out like a Pez dispenser. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've looked at is how, before you go in for surgery, how they don't let you eat or drink. They don't let you take any kind of ibuprofen or Tylenol or anything like that. Studies have found that if you take some Tylenol before you go in for surgery, that you'll actually have less pain when you come out without the opioids. And then also being dehydrated when you go in is a bad thing as well, even though they tell you don't eat or drink. So there are some doctors that are saying that this is important stuff. Mm-hmm. And also monitoring the drug use of our members is really important. Knowing, if they're starting to become addicted to opioids, it's really sad. And we were sitting around a room in one of our General Executive Council meetings, and GP Dean had asked us to raise our hand if suicide had touched our lives in the last year. And I think out of about the 20-something people that were in the room, they had counted 70 suicides that we had all been touched by collectively. Wow. It's an epidemic of a different kind of epidemic, but it is certainly an epidemic. Mm-hmm. And part of it is, again, substance abuse, but it's also, I think, the macho image, right? That you can't feel bad. You can't, if a man's going through a divorce and he's being a jerk at work, just asking him how it's going, hey, are you all right, can really make a difference. Mm-hmm. So again, it's those human interactions that we need to have and how we deal with them. If he's generally a good guy and all of a sudden he's being a complete jerk on a job, ask him, are you okay? Yeah. You want to get coffee after work? Just showing some compassion, and also making sure that if he's getting into that illegal harassment, because this is not his normal temperature, let's say, by keeping him from getting into illegal harassment is also important too, because we want to take good care of those 90 to 95% of the men that are good guys. Yeah. And again, no scientific data on that, but I would say that 90 to 95% of the men I've worked with have been really solid guys. Yeah. 5 to 10% are the biggest jerks on the planet. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to do much with them, but they don't like to be called out by the other good guys. Yeah. We need to check in on each other. We need to make sure we're okay. Yeah. I agree entirely. And it doesn't take a lot of time. No. The one cultural view of how we develop people currently in the trades is either on a very formal way or less formally, the idea of mentoring people. Yes.
And for those unions that have taken the steps to formalize a program and training for both the mentor and the mentee and follow through on them and maintain a focus on them, they're seeing good results. They're seeing people coming through their apprenticeship programs much better prepared to be journey persons.
Absolutely.
But you still have, again, my generation is still clogging up the works by saying, it's not my job. I got other things to do. They'll figure it out. That has to change.
That's a problem for me too, because it's this next generation that's going to pay the pensions of the generations before. So we better make sure they're prepared.
Yeah.
And we better teach them everything that they need to know because we need them.
Yeah.
So that's the argument that I always use with that it is your job as a journeyman to teach the apprentices, and not only teach them, but prepare them for a career in the ironworkers.
Right.
Because again,
Right.
we need them to pay your pension and to help you out.
That's right. Yeah. I think you say it perfectly. I would add as icing on that cupcake or cake, whichever you prefer, that it's also how we do that, which is a nod to the soft skills part.
Yes.
That we demonstrate patience, we demonstrate caring, we demonstrate interest, all those kinds of things. And maybe I should be busier than I am, but I'm plenty busy. But we need to keep talking about developing the whole person. And I'm not aware of any of the unions that you could point and say they're doing an incredible job of making sure that they get all the technical or hard skills they need and all the mentoring they need in that regard, but they're also being taught how to better communicate, how to be better listeners, how to solve problems, all those things which are a nod towards not the hard skills, not the tools, not the trade, but the people part.
Well, you'll be interested to see the Ironworkers magazine in June, because I did write an article about soft skills.
Oh, good.
And how that is what's missing in our trade. That if you have a foreman that's screaming and yelling at you all the time, it doesn't motivate you to work harder and faster. As a matter of fact,
Right.
If it's me, it's going to slow me down just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But if you have somebody that actually makes you feel like you're doing a great job, or that you can go to them and ask questions and listens to you and has good body language, right? That doesn't give off that you can't talk to me kind of thing, and has a good tone of voice. I think tone of voice is really huge too in how they speak to you. And yes, it's the soft skills. So yes, it's coming out in June. So take a look at that and you'll see that.
I look forward to it.
I think it's one of the things that's missing on the job.
Good. Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Right.
You don't have to sell me that idea. I'm the soft skills guy.
Yes. Yes.
Fortunately, I'm not the pillow guy. If I was the pillow guy, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
You probably wouldn't want to talk to me. I'm the soft skills guy. Vicki, this has been ridiculous in the best way possible. I knew that it would be enjoyable. I apologize if I talk too much, but I'm enthusiastic about the way you talk about all this stuff. We talked about a lot of really important stuff.
Yeah, we did.
It's all in the world of the people part of our business.
Yes.
I congratulate you on what you've done to date to earn all the recognition you have. And I know you'll continue to do it. And I look forward to the next step. So we've talked on the phone for an hour.
Yeah.
Now we've talked using a Zoom call. So the next step is to meet in person. So hopefully we'll find a way to do that.
That sounds awesome. I look forward to it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Duran.
Produced by Audivita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.